Welcome to the Social Business Engine podcast, where today's thought leaders discuss how they're using the latest social media strategies and technologies in marketing, sales, customer service, and HR. Get ready to be inspired as our guests contribute to your digital transformation through their stories, knowledge, and insights into what works in today's digitally connected world. And now, here's Bernie Borges, your host of the Social Business Engine podcast.
Hey there, this is Bernie Borges, and this is episode 124 and also the beginning of season 2 of the Social Business Engine podcast. Whether you are a long-time listener or even if this is your first episode, hey, thanks for listening. I'm really glad you're here. You know, ordinarily, I interview a guest from a brand or a technology company or an entrepreneur. But on the first episode of season 2, I'm going to solo. And the reason that I'm soloing is I want to put an exclamation point on a topic that is important to me and to who we are at the Social Business Engine. Now, if you have been listening to the Social Business Engine podcast for a while, you've never heard me talk about my digital marketing agency, Find and Convert. Now, the reason that I want to take a little time to mention it now is I want to give you context for the topic that I want to cover in this episode. You see, Find and Convert is my digital marketing agency that I started 14 years ago, back in 2002. We serve primarily B2B clients across the U.S. and Canada. Now, in recent years, we've had the privilege of providing training services to B2B companies, mostly around social selling training. In fact, the primary motivator for even launching Social Business Engine about 2.5 years ago is to walk the walk in creating thought leadership content on a strategic topic, and that is social media. You see, this is what we've been advising our clients to do for years. So we launched Social Business Engine as our proof statement. But there's been a huge benefit to this podcast that, frankly, we never anticipated. By interviewing thought leaders on a weekly basis, we've been able to learn so much and apply those learnings not only to our clients in supporting their business and marketing goals, but we've also learned about a common challenge among businesses in how they use social in their sales strategy. And we've applied these learnings to our own service offerings, and I'll elaborate on that a little bit later on. But first, what I want to do is I want to summarize key insights and inspirations from 10 guests on the Social Business Engine podcast from season 1. Now, specifically, I'm going to focus on guests where we cover the topic of social selling. Then I'll tie it all together at the end, so I hope you'll stay with me. Now, I'm going to start with my most recent guest on episode 123, and that's Tim Hughes. Now, Tim Hughes has 27 years of sales experience, which includes closing a $50 million sale. Wow. Now, he was recently inspired to co-author the best-selling book, Social Selling: Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. One of Tim's key points in his book is how B2B buyers only need to talk with a salesperson in the final 20% of their evaluation. Therefore, it is up to the salesperson to find their way into that first 80% through relevant content and value-added networking, or they risk not being invited into the final 20% of the buyer's evaluation. So Tim challenges a salesperson to own their territory online. Now, in episode 121, Tony Zayas, who's Director of Sales and Marketing at Proforma, a B2B franchise organization whose franchisees sell advertising specialty products to marketers, Tony developed a training program for their franchisees. He taught them that social media is just a communication platform. When he framed it up that way, and he taught them how to develop relationships through social media, they not only embraced the approach, they started to quickly produce sales results. Tony proved what we already know, which is sales success is very dependent on relationship building. And through common sense practices, relationship building is enabled in social channels, including Facebook, not just LinkedIn and Twitter. Now, in episode 119, Kirsten Boileau, who's Director of Digital Innovations at SAP, a global provider of enterprise software solutions. SAP employs approximately 30,000 salespeople. Yes, 30,000 salespeople around the world. Now, Kirsten specifically leads sales enablement at SAP, where she's focused on delivering social selling training at scale. Now, Kirsten inspired me by pointing out the obvious but profound fact that social selling is not a tool. Social selling is a process that requires behavior change, and it must be supported by both process and technology. And Kirsten is living the dream, what many other brands dream about, and that is collaboration between marketing and sales for sales enablement. Now, in episode 113, Glenn Gaudet, founder and president of Gagalamp, a leading provider of employee advocacy software, Glenn opened my eyes to the fact that social selling is a form of employee advocacy, of course with focus on sales activities. His key insight is the importance of employee engagement. If employees are not engaged internally, then it's unlikely to expect employees to effectively engage externally. Now, when you consider how in many businesses, the sales process is a team effort that extends beyond the individual salesperson, employee engagement is a key factor in long-term social selling success. On episode 107, it was a blab session, and I had 3 social selling experts on that. So Jill Rowley, who also, by the way, was my guest on episode 10, way back in the early days of the Social Business Engine podcast. Now, Jill Rowley is perhaps the most famous of all social selling experts. She, after 52 quarters in software sales, has trained thousands of sales professionals around the world on social selling process, and she preaches her core values around the world, and she embodies those core values. So, for example, Jill says, stop selling and start serving. She also says, give to give versus give to get. And then maybe my favorite is the ABCs of social selling. Always be connecting. Now, Jill uses a lot of hashtags to emphasize her social selling wisdom, and to that I say, hashtag Go Jill Rowley. All right, also on episode 107, as I mentioned, it was a blab session, and I had Jill on. I also had Jack Kosakowski. Jack is the global head of B2B social sales execution at the Creation Agency. Now, his social selling expertise is evident in his LinkedIn profile, as well as, of course, his track record. But on LinkedIn, in his summary, he says, among other inviting things, marketing and sales are finally starting to become one, and disruption is no longer a dirty word. Jack, I couldn't agree more. And then the third social selling expert that I had in my blab session on episode 107 was David J.P. Fisher, also known as D-Fish. He is one of my favorite Chicagoans. Now, D-Fish has authored so many books on professional networking for sales professionals that I've lost count. He is a speaker and a business coach, and he motivated me on social selling through his no-nonsense and pragmatic approach to networking. In fact, his most recent book, Networking in the 21st Century, is a must-read for anyone serious about relationship building through modern networking in the digitally connected age. Now, in episode 103, as well as episode 59, is Amy Heiss. Amy is Director of Social Media Activation and Community University at Dell. Now, that's a long word or a long title, so the acronym for that is SMAC-U. Yes, SMAC-U, Social Media Activation and Community University at Dell. Now, Dell employs 110,000 people. And let's face it, not too many companies employ more than 100,000 people. And I don't know if you know this, but Dell is mostly a B2B company. And Amy's team at SMAC-U has trained about 16,000 employees. And what impresses me about what Amy is accomplishing at Dell is how they tie social media engagement into the business and seek to measure activity and engagement to business outcomes. Now, Amy admits that the measurement piece is a journey, and it's not always so black and white. But hey, it's an ongoing focus for Amy and her team at Smack You. Love that name, Smack You. All right, in episode 93, Julio Viscovich is recognized by Forbes as a top 30 social selling influencer across the world. Now, Julio is also a frequent speaker at conferences on social selling and employee advocacy, and he's an executive at rFactor, an employee advocacy software firm. Now, Julio's inspiration to me is his real-world experience developing, implementing, and supporting social selling programs at Fortune 500 brands by integrating sales process with technology. Now, in episode 83, Brian Kramer, who is an internationally acclaimed author, keynote speaker, and consultant. Brian has made famous the phrase human to human. Now, he said this in the context of our business world. We throw around buzzwords like B2B and B2C, and Brian says it's not about B2B or B2C, it's H to H, human to human. One of Brian's inspirations to me is his suggestion that social selling shouldn't be called social selling. He thinks it should be called social helping. Profound. All right, what I want to do now is I want to tie these 10 podcast guests together and the insights that I gained from them, and I want to do that by highlighting the common thread among these 10 amazing guests. And if you look at it, it's really around the fact that sales in the modern connected age is comprised of these three fundamental pillars. Number one, personal branding. The individual's brand is tantamount to sales success. Number two, consistent communication. And number three, relationship building. And of course, we all know relationship building has always been important in sales. It's just different in the digital and connected age. So I really have to be honest with you, though. When I look at our day-to-day experience with our own clients and the companies that we talk with, I see a gap. I see a void in the salesperson's social profile and how they behave online and how they struggle achieving these three pillars. These three pillars are foundational. And if they get these three pillars right, then they set themselves up for successful sales activities. So I want to spend the remaining few minutes highlighting the key attributes of a salesperson's social profile because it's foundational to successful social selling. So let's start with the why. A social profile, your social profile, my social profile is available 24/7. I know that's a statement of the obvious. Well, here's another statement of the obvious. Most of us don't engage in social channels 24/7. At least I don't. I don't know about you. But again, our social profile is online 24/7. So if I can borrow from Michael Port, who's the author of the best-selling book, Steal the Show, our social profiles should perform for us. Now, this performance concept is really a powerful concept, and I want you to wrap your head around that. But how? How can our social profile perform for us? That's a different way of looking at your social profile. So what I want to do is I want to look at that with a focus on LinkedIn. Now, of course, you can apply these principles to Twitter, Facebook, or any other social channel you want to apply it to. But I'm going to focus primarily on LinkedIn because if you're in B2B, that's primarily where you really need to get that right first. All right, so I want to start with the concept that LinkedIn is not your resume. You know, I have seen that many sales professionals think of LinkedIn as their online resume. In fact, not even just sales professionals, just people in general. But I want you to think about the people that you want to reach as your audience. Don't think of them as prospects or customers or peers. Think of them as your audience. And remember what I said, your profile needs to perform for them. So think about what feelings and emotions you want your audience to experience when they meet you and experience you. Yeah, experience you. That's a different way of thinking of your social profile. So think of it this way. Do you want your audience to just read your LinkedIn profile, or do you want them to experience it? So think about this. When you go to a movie or a sporting event or a concert, do you just watch it, or do you have an experience? Now, if you don't think this is apples to apples, I want you to think about it. We live in a multi-sensory, multimedia world. Someone who's visiting your LinkedIn profile can experience all but two aspects of you. Okay, on LinkedIn, you can't be touched and you can't be smelled, at least not literally. But you can provide a multi-sensory experience through your profile that causes an emotional reaction about your brand and what it represents to the potential buyer. Now, the next thing I want you to think about is you've got to have a killer headline in your LinkedIn profile that performs. Now, a headline should be attention-grabbing. It's supposed to begin the experience with you and the person visiting your profile. Most people list their job title in their LinkedIn headline. Generally, that's because they're not thinking like a performer, so they're not writing a headline. So let's look at an example. Let's say your job title is Enterprise Sales Executive at XYZ Company. Now, does that really set you apart from other enterprise sales executives? No, it doesn't. So consider a headline like this: Creating Measurable Efficiencies Through Supply Chain Logistics Software. See what I've done? I'm opening up with a verb. It's an action. You're creating something. You're creating efficiencies. You're creating measurable efficiencies. How are you doing that? Through supply chain logistics software. So think about creating a compelling headline that emotionally describes what you do and how you do it. And then finally, and there's more to it, but in this podcast, it's going to be the third point that I'm going to cover. Finally, write a summary that performs. You know, the summary section of your LinkedIn profile is possibly the most important element of your social profile. A lot of people don't even write a summary on their LinkedIn profile. A lot of people just skip it and jump right to their job experience. And that's because they look at their LinkedIn profile as an online resume rather than a sales asset. But if you're in sales, a summary is a must. And frankly, I don't care if you're in sales or not. I believe your summary is a must in your social profile. Now remember, the purpose of your LinkedIn profile is to deliver a performance that will enable you to get into conversations with your target audience. So write a summary that performs. And the way that you do that is twofold. First, tell a story. Tell a story that describes your professional journey and what you've accomplished. Also, show your personality. Don't be afraid to be human. There's no rule anywhere that says your LinkedIn summary needs to be boring. You can spice it up a little bit. Just be mindful of your audience. Give people a reason to connect with you or to contact you. Your summary should be an invitation that's written for your buyer. It should be so compelling that your buyer will, at a minimum, research you further and your content further. But in the best case, will want to actually contact you to seek your input on a relevant topic. Now look, I invite you to visit the LinkedIn profiles of any of the 10 guests that I have showcased earlier. Each of them, and I mean each of them, has written a compelling headline and summary, and their profile is working for them 24/7. Now, ordinarily, when I interview a guest on my podcast, I summarize my conversation with my podcast guests. So I'm actually going to do a quick little summary here, even though my conversation has been with you or with myself soloing. But here's my summary for episode 124. Most businesses are trying to figure out social selling. It's still a journey. Social selling is a mix of process, technology, and behavior change. Training and enablement is important to roll out a social selling program in any sales organization, no matter how small or large. Your social profile is foundational. While you're not engaging 24/7 on social, your profile is accessible 24/7. Your social profile should not be an online resume. It should be a sales asset. And even if you're a marketing professional, it should still be a sales asset. Writing a compelling and attention-grabbing headline is a critically important element of your social profile. And writing a creative and a compelling summary that tells your story and how you solve problems for your customers, and also providing an invitation to connect or talk is another very critically important element of your social profile. Your social profile should be appealing to your customers. And again, even if you're not in sales, define your customers and think in that context. Even if you're looking for a job right now, your profile should appeal to an employer because of how you communicate, how you solve problems for your customers. Now, look, there's a lot more that I could say about how to create a great social profile, but I like to keep these podcast episodes in around 30 minutes or so, give or take. So I'm going to leave it at that. But we're going to be covering this topic in social selling in a lot more in future episodes. In fact, we are so passionate about this topic that we have launched our own online course to address it. And it's called Optimize Your Social Profile for Sales Success. So whether you're an entrepreneur or a member of a sales team or a marketer who interacts with the sales team, I invite you to check it out and go take the free trial for this online course. And of course, you can find that at our website at socialbusinessengine.com. Now, before I close out episode 124, the first episode of season 2, I want to invite you to become a member of our Social Business Engine community. Membership is free and it provides premium content that we only make available to members. Our community is made up of thousands of business professionals whose common interest is using social media strategy, social technology, and social culture to create better business results and to improve their career. It's easy to become a member, and remember, it's free. Just hit our website at socialbusinessengine.com. Well, that's going to do it for episode 124. I wish you continued success on your social business journey.
Thank you for listening to the Social Business Engine podcast. Be sure to tune in again next week to reconnect with Bernie Borges for more insights, inspiration, and practical advice on social business. Visit socialbusinessengine.com to catch even more content on social strategy that will rock your business and your career.